The story of Miyamoto Musashi begins not in a bustling city or a grand castle, but in the quiet countryside of 16th century Japan. It was a world shaped by mist-covered mountains, winding rivers, and the distant echo of clashing steel, a land still recovering from decades of conflict. In this calm but uncertain landscape, a child was born who would one day become one of the most renowned swordsmen in history. Yet in these early years, he was simply a boy observing the rhythms of nature and human life. The winds that passed through the valleys carried stories of warriors, but Musashi's own journey started in silence. He was born around 1584 in the village of Miyamoto, a place surrounded by forests where the light filtered softly through tall pines. The bamboo leaves swayed gently in the breeze, and the sound of running water accompanied daily life. Musashi grew up in a Japan transitioning between eras, where warlords still battled for power and the samurai class struggled to define itself. His father, Shinmen Munisai, was a skilled martial artist known for his mastery of sword and jutsu techniques. Yet their relationship was distant, shadowed by strict discipline and the stoic expectations of the warrior class. Musashi spent much of his childhood wandering the fields and riverbanks, absorbing lessons not from formal training, but from the quiet observation of the natural world. He watched how water flowed around stones instead of resisting them. He noticed how trees bent in storms without breaking. These simple, patient observations would become the seeds of his later philosophy. Long before he understood the art of the sword, he understood the subtle patterns of nature, a wisdom that grew quietly within him like roots beneath the soil. His early life was shaped by both solitude and independence. Unlike many children of the samurai class, Musashi did not grow up within the protective structure of a powerful clan. He experienced freedom in a way that encouraged self-reliance and internal reflection. When his father's strict teachings became overwhelming, Musashi would retreat into the mountains, where the silence soothed him. The forests became his refuge, a place where he could breathe, observe, and grow away from the pressures of expected tradition. In these moments, the foundation of his future strength took form. As Musashi entered early adolescence, Japan moved deeper into the Sengoku period, an age of shifting alliances and relentless conflict. Warriors traveled from village to village, pledging loyalty to lords who might rise or fall within a single season. Young Musashi witnessed the uncertainty of this world, seeing both the destruction it caused and the discipline it demanded. The stories that reached his village spoke of famous duels, master swordsmen, and the pursuit of honor. Yet Musashi did not chase glory. Instead, he sensed that there was something deeper behind the sword, something rooted in understanding rather than merely victory. Around the age of 13, Musashi was introduced to formal combat for the first time. His first recorded duel was against Arima Kihei, a traveling warrior who challenged local fighters to test their skills. Musashi stepped forward with a boldness surprising for his age. Armed with nothing more than a wooden staff, he faced a trained swordsman and emerged victorious. Witnesses described his intensity, the way he moved without hesitation, guided not by technique alone, but by instinct shaped through years of quiet observation. This moment marked the beginning of his path as a duelist. The villagers saw something unusual in the boy, a blend of calm focus and raw, untamed talent. He was not driven by pride, nor did he celebrate his victory. Instead, he returned to the calm of the countryside, as if needing to reflect on what had just unfolded. Musashi began to understand that the path before him would not be one of comfort or convention. His journey would be shaped by the conflicts of the era, yes, but also by a deeper search for meaning. Even at a young age, he sensed that mastery required more than physical strength. It required discipline, awareness, and the willingness to walk a solitary path. As tensions continued across Japan, Musashi felt the pull toward the world beyond his village. The stories of warriors, their battles, their philosophies, and their quests for purpose stirred something within him. He began training more seriously, practicing swings, stances, and footwork with the quiet dedication that became his trademark. His early teachings were not strictly structured. Instead, he learned through trial, error, and intuition. Each motion became a meditation, each practice session a conversation between his spirit and the world around him. By the time Musashi approached adulthood, the simplicity of village life no longer contained him. He stood at the threshold of a wider world, one filled with opportunities to test his skills, encounter new philosophies, and confront challenges that would shape him deeply. The run-in path called to him a life without allegiance to any single master. It was a path of freedom, but also loneliness and uncertainty. Yet Musashi felt a quiet confidence building within him, as steady and natural as the flow of the river he had grown up beside. And so, with little more than his spirit and his determination, he prepared to leave home. The forests, the mountains, and the quiet streams had shaped his early years. Now they watched silently as he stepped into the world beyond, carrying with him the beginnings of a philosophy that would one day become legendary. The boy from Miyamoto was ready, not for fame or glory, but for the journey of a lifetime. Leaving his village marked the true beginning of Musashi's wandering life. He carried no elaborate equipment, no ornate armor, and no sense of entitlement. Instead, he stepped into the uncertain world of the late Sengoku period with the quiet resolve of someone who understood that mastery required movement. The path ahead wound through dense forests, narrow mountain passes, and provinces struggling to recover from years of conflict. Each step took him farther from the sheltered innocence of childhood and deeper into a landscape defined by shifting loyalties and unspoken danger. Musashi encountered many types of travelers along the way. Farmers moving between markets, monks journeying to distant temples, and samurai serving unfamiliar lords. He watched them with a curious and composed gaze, noticing details others might overlook. The way a warrior carried himself, the caution in a merchant's step, the clarity in a monk's expression. These quiet observations became lessons. They taught him that strength wore many forms, and that wisdom often appeared in the simplest gestures. The road itself became a teacher, patient and constant. As he traveled, Musashi practiced wherever he found room. Villages saw him in empty fields at dawn, rehearsing movements with fluid discipline. Monks spotted him near temple courtyards, repeating stances until his breathing and posture softened into harmony. The forests witnessed his silent training, each swing of his wooden weapon echoing between the trees. Musashi understood that repetition did more than refine technique. It revealed deeper truths about patience, focus, and the connection between mind and body. The sword, he slowly realized, was not merely a tool of combat, but a mirror reflecting the spirit. It was during these early travels that Musashi began seeking out duels, not for glory, but for growth. Dueling was a common practice among warriors of the era, a way to test skill and prove one's spirit. For Musashi, each opponent became a moment of learning. He began to understand how individuals moved, how fear shaped their actions, and how confidence could be both an advantage and a weakness. Victory meant little without insight. After each duel, he reflected quietly on the encounter, analyzing not just the outcome, but what it taught him about himself. His reputation started to grow almost unintentionally. In towns he barely remembered, people whispered about the young Ronin who fought with unusual calm. Warriors older than he found themselves surprised by his adaptability and the intensity behind his movements. Yet Musashi did not linger in these places long enough to bask in praise or recognition. Once a duel ended, He often resumed his journey without waiting for reactions. The road called to him, urging him forward to seek experiences that would further shape his evolving philosophy. Japan during this period was a mosaic of shifting power. Daimyo built alliances and broke them just as quickly. Castles rose and fell with the momentum of war. Musashi traveled through regions scarred by conflict, fields where battles had raged, villages still recovering from raids, and fortresses preparing for sieges. The impermanence of political structures left a deep impression on him. He saw that strength rooted solely in status or authority could crumble overnight. True mastery, he realized, had to come from within, untouched by the instability of the outside world. Along his journey, Musashi also encountered moments of unexpected kindness. Villagers offered him meals in exchange for small favors. Monks allowed him to sleep within temple walls when storms rolled in. Children watched him practice with fascination, their laughter softening the weight of his solitary path. These experiences reminded him that life contained more than combat and conflict. They revealed the gentle side of the world, a side that nourished his spirit even as he trained to become a warrior. He began to appreciate how strength and compassion could coexist. Musashi's early travels brought him close to various schools of martial arts, each with its own techniques and traditions. Some relied on rigid forms, others on fluid improvisation. He observed these styles carefully, absorbing what resonated and disregarding what felt overly constrained. This freedom allowed him to shape his own evolving method, a style grounded in adaptability rather than adherence to a single doctrine. Musashi valued what was useful, effective, and aligned with natural movement. His path became one of continuous refinement, rooted not in imitation but in discovery. As years passed, the young swordsman's skill deepened. Yet what truly distinguished Musashi was not raw talent but mindset. He approached each day with calm determination, maintaining a quiet balance between discipline and intuition. He did not chase perfection. Instead, he sought understanding. Whether observing the sway of bamboo or the stance of an opponent, he trained his mind to remain steady. This internal stillness became the foundation upon which his mastery grew, guiding him toward insights that transcended mere technique. By the end of these early travels, Musashi stood at a significant threshold. He was no longer the boy who had defeated Arima Kihei, nor the inexperienced wanderer who first left his village. He had become a young ronin with a growing reputation, a mind shaped by solitude and a spirit strengthened by countless hours of reflection and practice. The world ahead promised greater challenges, battles that would test not only his skill, but his understanding of purpose. With quiet determination, he walked toward this unfolding future, carrying with him a philosophy still forming, yet undeniably profound. As Musashi entered early adulthood, Japan stood at the edge of a decisive transformation. The land had been fractured by decades of war, but now forces were gathering for what would become the most defining conflict of the era, the Battle of Sekigahara. Rumors of armies marching from distant provinces echoed across villages, traveling through the countryside like a shifting wind. Musashi, still a young ronin with much to learn, felt the pull of this moment. The chaos of war promised both danger and experience, and Musashi understood that his path would eventually bring him to this historic turning point. He arrived at Sekigahara not as a soldier bound by allegiance, but as a wandering warrior, seeking understanding through action. The valley was veiled in morning mist, its tall grasses bending beneath the weight of dew. Thousands of warriors gathered on both sides, banners fluttering softly in the wind, like muted breaths before the storm. Musashi studied the scene with quiet focus, observing the formations, the subtle movements of commanders, and the tension rising in the air. The calm before battle revealed truths not found in duels or training hall techniques. It exposed the magnitude of ambition and the fragility of human life. When combat erupted, the valley transformed into a whirlwind of motion and sound. The clash of steel rang out across the battlefield, mixing with commands, cries, and the heavy thud of armored footsteps. Musashi moved through this chaos with instinctive precision. He fought not for victory in the traditional sense, but to deepen his understanding of combat beyond individual duels. He saw how fear clouded judgment, how overload broke discipline, and how adaptability often meant survival. Each moment forced him to adjust, respond, and remain calm amid disorder. The scale of the battle left a profound impression on him. While duels offered clarity, one opponent, one moment, one exchange, war demanded a different type of presence. It required awareness of surroundings, understanding of timing, and acceptance of uncertainty. Musashi realized that many warriors, though skilled in technique, were unprepared for the chaos of true conflict. This insight shaped his developing philosophy that mastery could not rely solely on form, but on the ability to remain grounded when everything around lost structure. Amid the storm of Sekigahara, Musashi discovered the deeper layers of martial reality. The battlefield ultimately fell to Tokugawa Ieyasu, whose victory would unify Japan under a new shogunate. But Musashi's experience at Sekigahara was not defined by sides or outcomes. As the fighting quieted and dust settled across the valley, he stood among the remnants of a nation shifting into a new era. His heart was heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed, the fragility of ambition, the cost of discord, and the impermanence of worldly power. Yet he also felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was still much for him to learn, and the world beyond Sekigahara stretched wide with possibilities. In the days that followed, Musashi walked away from the battlefield with a steady calm, stepping into the next chapter of his journey. The experience had sharpened his perspective, revealing the difference between technique practiced in isolation and the fluidity needed in real encounters. He carried with him a deeper appreciation for awareness, adaptability, and mental clarity. Though he had entered Sekigahara as a young warrior seeking growth, he left with the beginnings of true insight. His path now moved toward a quieter but more profound stage, one where duels would test not just his weapon, but his evolving philosophy. After Sekigahara, Musashi continued his travels through villages, towns, and martial academies scattered across Japan. The country, though stabilizing under the Tokugawa shogunate, still contained pockets of tension, pride, and competition among schools of swordsmanship. As Musashi wandered, he encountered countless martial traditions, each with its own teachings, techniques, and philosophies. He watched warriors train in structured rhythms, their movements practiced and predictable. But Musashi sought something deeper, something more fluid and adaptable. He understood that true mastery required freedom from rigid form. One of the most significant encounters during this period occurred when Musashi met members of the Yoshioka school in Kyoto. The Yoshioka were respected, well-established, and confident in their lineage. Their reputation spread across the region, drawing challengers who wished to test themselves. Musashi, still young but already known for his unconventional style, stepped into their domain with quiet purpose. The first duel against Yoshioka Seijuro ended quickly. Musashi's unexpected timing and raw presence disrupted the formal rhythm of Seijuro's technique. It was a victory that sent ripples through Kyoto's martial circles. The Yoshioka, shaken but unwilling to let their honor rest unresolved, challenged him again, this time sending Seijuro's brother Den Shichiro. Musashi accepted calmly, aware that each duel was not simply a test of strength, but an opportunity to refine his understanding. The second duel ended much like the first, with Musashi emerging victorious. His style was disruptive, fluid and unpredictable, crafted through personal experience rather than formal schooling. His success frustrated traditional warriors, who often relied on structured kata and fixed expectations. Musashi's presence revealed the limitations of rigid thinking. The Yoshioka clan, determined to restore their reputation, issued a final challenge, one that departed from honorable custom. They planned an ambush, gathering numerous warriors to confront him at once. Musashi sensed the shift immediately, recognizing that this battle would not be a duel, but a test of instinct and awareness. He arrived early, taking position in the quiet morning light before the Yoshioka forces gathered. Armed with a wooden weapon rather than a steel blade, he prepared himself with calm breathing. When the ambush unfolded, Musashi moved like water through their formation, using timing, positioning, and adaptability to overwhelm the group. The conclusion of the Yoshioka series marked a turning point in Musashi's reputation. He was no longer just a talented young swordsman. He had become a formidable figure whose presence carried weight. Yet Musashi did not linger in places where his victories echoed too loudly. Fame was not his goal. Instead, he left Kyoto discreetly, returning to the quiet rhythms of the road. He understood that the path toward true mastery required humility, reflection, and continuous growth. The world offered endless lessons, and he intended to learn each one with patience. During these travels, Musashi faced many challengers, some driven by pride, others by curiosity. He met spear wielders, swordsmen, archers, and martial artists of various disciplines. Each encounter further refined his evolving style. He learned to read subtle shifts in weight, the intention concealed within posture, and the emotional patterns that governed opponents' decisions. Musashi began to realize that victory often depended less on raw power and more on clarity, the ability to remain centered while others faltered. He saw that fear, hesitation, and pride were the true enemies of a warrior. These duels also revealed something about Musashi himself. Despite his successes, he felt no desire for the comforts or recognition that many warriors sought. He preferred simplicity, a quiet place to sleep, a small meal, and time to reflect. The road was his true companion, offering silence in which he could listen to his own thoughts. Over time, Musashi's path became less about defeating others and more about understanding himself. He recognized that strength grew not from domination, but from insight. This realization would eventually shape the philosophy he would pass down to future generations. Musashi's journey after the Yoshioka duels strengthened his belief that rigid styles limited a warrior's potential. He valued flexibility, awareness, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. His experiences on the road, in ambushes, and in duels confirmed that life rarely followed predictable patterns. Techniques learned in practice could fail if the mind was not open to the present moment. Musashi sought to cultivate a mind that did not cling to expectation, a mind capable of seeing clearly even amid uncertainty. By the end of this stage in his journey, Musashi had encountered more opponents than most warriors would meet in a lifetime. Yet the true victories he carried were internal, lessons etched into memory through reflection and experience. He was shaping a philosophy not only of combat, but of life, grounded in observation, humility, and continuous refinement. His path was far from over, but the foundation of his legendary mastery had been laid. The young Ronin from Miyamoto was becoming something greater, a seeker of truth guided by silence, discipline, and the endless horizon ahead. As Musashi continued his journey across Japan, he found himself entering a quieter phase of life, one shaped less by the intensity of duels and more by the pursuit of understanding. Though he remained a Ronin, wandering without allegiance to any lord, his path grew deeper and more introspective. He began noticing subtleties in the world that he had overlooked in his youth. The way shadows shifted. At dawn, the rhythm of villagers working fields, the patience of a monk sweeping temple floors. These gentle observations nurtured a growing awareness within him. Mastery, he sensed, was not only physical, but spiritual. During his travels, Musashi sought out schools of martial arts not merely to challenge them, but to learn from their teachings. He visited dojos that taught rigid kata, systems focusing on precise forms practiced repeatedly until committed to muscle memory. Though he admired their discipline, he felt that such methods sometimes trapped practitioners in fixed patterns. Musashi valued adaptability, the ability to respond to unpredictable situations with clarity. He realized that a warrior who relied too heavily on form could falter when faced with real danger. Life, like combat, demanded fluidity. One of the most significant encounters during this period took place at a dojo, known for its strong emphasis on spear techniques. The school's head instructor welcomed Musashi with respect, intrigued by the stories of the wandering swordsmen. Musashi observed their training quietly before stepping onto the practice floor. The duel that followed was not marked by aggression, but by a gentle exchange of timing and movement. Musashi emerged victorious, but it was the lesson afterward that mattered more. The instructor explained the importance of distancing, rhythm, and intention, concepts Musashi integrated into his growing philosophy. Musashi's journey also led him to monks, poets, and craftsmen, individuals who explored the depths of their own disciplines with devotion. He learned from them the value of careful attention and the patience required for mastery. A calligrapher showed him how the flow of ink reflected the state of one's mind. A potter demonstrated how clay responded to subtle pressure, transforming raw material into graceful form. These encounters softened Musashi's perspective. He saw that artistry and combat shared a foundation: awareness, presence, and harmony between inner intention and outward action. Nature, too, became one of Musashi's greatest teachers. He spent long hours alone in forests, watching rivers carve their way through stone and branches sway without breaking. These observations shaped his understanding of strategy. Water taught him adaptability. Wind taught him timing. Mountain silence taught him patience. Musashi realized that true strength lay not in resistance, but in alignment with natural principles. His developing philosophy, later called Niten Ichi Ryu, two heavens as one, began to form like a quiet current beneath every experience he absorbed. As the years passed, Musashi's inner calm deepened. He found himself drawn less to fame and more to solitude. The excitement of duels no longer held the same appeal. He now sought encounters that offered insight rather than recognition. His mind sharpened through contemplation, and his spirit grew more grounded. While the world around him still simmered with tension and political shifts, Musashi remained focused on his personal path. Each village, each temple, and each quiet stretch of road added to his understanding of himself and the art he pursued. This period became one of profound refinement. Musashi's movements grew simpler, his awareness sharper, and his intentions clearer. He no longer relied on strength alone, he relied on presence. Victory in combat became less about overpowering an opponent and more about seeing the moment clearly, understanding timing, distance, and intent. This clarity extended beyond battle. Musashi began living with the same precision he applied to his duels, embracing a life guided by balance, discipline, and quiet purpose. Though he had already surpassed many warriors in skill, Musashi did not consider himself a master. He believed mastery was not a destination, but an endless journey. With this mindset, he walked deeper into the world, seeking experiences that would reveal even greater truths. The path before him was long and winding, but he followed it with steady footsteps, carrying with him the growing wisdom that would one day define his legend. Among the encounters that shaped Musashi's life, none became more famous or more misunderstood, than his duel with Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was renowned throughout Japan as a formidable swordsman, a master of the long nodachi blade, known for its sweeping, powerful strikes. His technique, called tsubamegaishi, was said to mimic the elegant movement of a swallow's tail. His reputation drew the admiration of nobles and warriors alike. Yet Musashi did not seek him out for fame or rivalry. Their meeting grew from a natural convergence of two paths shaped by discipline, experience, and the pursuit of mastery. Kojiro's challenge came at a time when Musashi's reputation had spread far beyond his own expectations. Stories of his victories, especially those against the Yoshioka clan, reached ears across the provinces. When Kojiro heard these tales, he became interested in facing the Ronin who moved with such unconventional skill. The duel was arranged on Ganryu Island, a quiet place surrounded by calm waters and far from the bustling cities of Japan. Musashi accepted the challenge with characteristic calm, recognizing that this encounter would be a meaningful test. On the morning of the duel, Musashi arrived late, a detail often retold as arrogance, but more likely a deliberate strategy. He approached the island by boat, carving a wooden oar during the journey to use as his weapon. This choice reflected his confidence and adaptability. He believed one's understanding of timing and distance mattered more than the weapon itself. As he stepped onto the shore, the early light shimmered across the water, and Kojiro stood waiting, nodachi in hand. The atmosphere was quiet, charged not with hostility, but with mutual respect. The duel unfolded with a simplicity that masked profound complexity. Kojiro struck first, his long blade cutting through the air with practiced force. Musashi stepped off the line of attack with fluid precision, using the length of his oar to disrupt the rhythm of Kojiro's movements. The encounter was swift, a few breaths, a few steps, a decisive moment. Musashi's strike found its mark, and the duel ended as quickly as it began. Kojiro fell gracefully, as dignified in defeat as he had been in challenge. Musashi did not celebrate. He stood quietly, absorbing the weight of the moment. Kojiro had been a worthy opponent, disciplined and skilled. Their duel, though brief, symbolized the meeting of two philosophies, one shaped by structure and refinement, the other by adaptability and insight. As Musashi bowed respectfully, he felt neither triumph nor sorrow. Instead, he felt gratitude for the opportunity to test and deepen his understanding of the path he walked. The victory confirmed what he had long sensed. Mastery required fluidity, awareness, and the ability to see beyond technique. The duel with Kojiro marked the end of Musashi's era of frequent violent encounters. He realized that the path of constant challenge was no longer necessary for his growth. His victories, though numerous, no longer defined him. He sought instead a quieter journey, one focused on philosophy, art, and inner refinement. The island, now forever linked to their legendary duel, became a symbolic turning point. After Ganryu, Musashi began moving toward a life where the sword served as a tool for understanding rather than conflict. In the years that followed, the story of the duel spread across Japan, often growing embellished by retellings. Some called Musashi a genius, others called Kojiro a tragic hero. Yet the truth was far simpler. Two warriors met, each carrying a lifetime of experience, and in that moment, Musashi's evolving philosophy prevailed. The encounter was not a display of dominance, but a reflection of the path he had chosen, a path grounded in clarity, adaptability, and a deep respect for the art of combat. With the duel behind him, Musashi's heart turned toward deeper questions. What was the true purpose of the sword? What lay beyond victory and defeat? These questions would guide him into the next phase of his life, a phase devoted not to proving himself through battle, but to understanding the nature of mastery itself. The island grew distant as he left by boat, but the lessons remained, quietly shaping the man he was becoming. After the duel with Sasaki Kojiro, Musashi felt a quiet change settle over him. The years of wandering, clashing steel and countless duels had sharpened both his body and mind, yet they also revealed the limits of constant confrontation. Victory no longer brought satisfaction. Instead, it encouraged reflection. Musashi realized that the true path of mastery extended beyond defeating opponents. It required understanding the deeper nature of strength, intention, and the mind. As he walked away from Ganryu Island, he felt the first subtle pull toward a more introspective life. He began traveling with less urgency, allowing the rhythm of the world to guide his steps. He spent time in small villages, listening to the stories of farmers, craftsmen, and elders. Their lives, though far removed from the world of duels and martial prestige, carried a wisdom born from patience and simplicity. Musashi found these quiet lessons deeply meaningful. He saw how each person, regardless of status, walked a path shaped by daily effort and inner resolve. These observations helped him understand that mastery was not reserved for warriors. It lived within anyone dedicated to their craft. In this gentler phase of his journey, Musashi became more aware of the importance of the mind in shaping technique. He practiced alone in forests and beside rivers, repeating movements until they felt natural and unforced. Instead of increasing speed or strength, he focused on refining intention. Each practice session became a meditation, each swing of a wooden sword a quiet exploration of balance. Musashi realized that physical skill mattered less than clarity of thought. When the mind was clear, the body moved with purpose. When the mind wavered, technique faltered. This insight led Musashi to begin developing the foundations of what would eventually become his martial school, Niten Ichi Ryu, the School of Two Heavens as One. Though he did not yet formally teach students, he explored the principles within himself. His style emphasized using both long and short swords together, not as separate weapons, but as complementary extensions of intention. To Musashi, dual wielding represented the union of different aspects of oneself, strength and subtlety, distance and closeness, outer action, and inner awareness. With each practice session, he refined this philosophy like a craftsman shaping a blade. During this period, Musashi also immersed himself in the arts. He practiced painting, calligraphy, sculpture, and poetry, disciplines that demanded the same presence and precision as combat. Holding a brush felt similar to holding a sword. Both required steadiness, breath, and awareness. Musashi recognized that art revealed aspects of the self that combat alone could not. Through ink, he explored softness. Through sculpture, he discovered patience. Through poetry, he expressed thoughts too quiet for spoken words. These arts deepened his understanding of rhythm, timing, and flow, concepts central to his martial philosophy. He also spent time in temples and with monks, observing how they approached discipline from an entirely different perspective. Their teachings focused on stillness, humility, and self-awareness. Musashi never became a monk, but he absorbed their lessons with gratitude. He learned that strength without compassion created imbalance, and that clarity required the courage to look inward. In these moments of reflection, he began to sense that the true battle was not fought against opponents, but within oneself, against fear, ego, and attachment. As Musashi integrated these lessons, his presence grew calmer and more grounded. People who encountered him during this phase often noted his quiet demeanor. He did not boast about victories or challenge others recklessly. Instead, he moved through the world with the composure of someone who had begun to understand his own nature. His reputation spread not only because of his skill, but because of the depth of his character. He had become a warrior whose strength radiated not from aggression, but from stillness. This period marked a profound shift in Musashi's journey. He was no longer driven by the desire to prove himself. Instead, he sought to align his actions with a deeper purpose, to refine his spirit through both combat and contemplation. The path ahead would continue to challenge him, but now he walked it with greater clarity. The young Ronin who once traveled in search of duels was transforming into a teacher, philosopher, and master whose wisdom extended far beyond the blade. As Musashi matured, he began attracting followers naturally. Young warriors, hearing stories of his victories and his unusual approach to training, sought him out with the hope of learning from him. Musashi did not open a formal school immediately. Instead, he taught those who traveled with him along the road. Lessons were woven into the fabric of daily life. Students learned not only combat techniques, but how to observe the world, calm their minds, and act with intention. Musashi believed that true teaching required guiding someone toward understanding, not merely showing them movements. His instruction often began with silence. He encouraged his students to watch the world before attempting to influence it. They practiced breathing before practicing cutting. They learned to stand with stability before learning to step. Musashi explained that a warrior who did not understand stillness could not understand motion. His lessons were simple but profound, rooted in the belief that mastery emerged from awareness rather than imitation. Students found his guidance challenging, yet deeply transformative. One of Musashi's distinctive teachings was the idea that one should rely on natural movement rather than forced technique. He demonstrated how rigid stances failed under pressure, while adaptable posture allowed seamless response. He believed that every person possessed inherent strengths, and that a teacher's role was to help uncover them rather than impose a fixed method. Because of this, no two of his students moved exactly alike. Musashi encouraged individuality, trusting that the essence of his philosophy would shape each person uniquely. Traveling with him was not easy. Musashi's lifestyle was simple, often austere. Students walked long distances, trained in remote locations, and faced both physical and mental challenges. Yet the hardships served a purpose. Musashi wanted them to understand that the path of mastery required resilience and the willingness to confront discomfort. He taught them to observe their own reactions to fatigue, uncertainty, and fear. In doing so, they learned to recognize the deeper patterns that governed their thoughts and actions. Musashi continued to seek inspiration from sources beyond the martial arts. He studied landscapes, architecture, and the movements of animals. He taught his students how strategy could be found in everything, the way birds flew in formation, the method a carpenter used to join wood, the manner in which a river flowed around obstacles. He believed that a warrior should be able to draw wisdom from any aspect of life. This broad perspective distinguished his philosophy from others, which often focused narrowly on formal technique. Over time, Musashi's teachings refined into principles that would later appear in his writings. He emphasized timing as the heart of strategy, the ability to act at the exact moment when action would be most effective. He taught that seeing clearly required removing assumptions and preconceptions. He reinforced the importance of inner composure, explaining that a disturbed mind produced disturbed technique. These ideas shaped the foundation of the martial philosophy he would eventually present to the world. Despite the respect he earned, Musashi maintained a humble presence. He slept simply, ate modestly, and avoided unnecessary conflict. His humility impressed those who met him. Many expected a fierce warrior consumed by pride, but found instead a quiet, thoughtful teacher who valued clarity over reputation. Musashi rarely spoke of his past victories. Instead, he focused on what still needed understanding. To him, the journey toward mastery never ended. Each day offered another opportunity to learn. As Musashi's journey deepened, he became increasingly drawn to artistic expression. His days of constant dueling were behind him, replaced with a quieter exploration of the inner world. Painting, calligraphy, poetry, and sculpture offered him insights that combat alone could not reveal. Each discipline held its own rhythm, its own form of truth, and Musashi approached them with the same calm dedication he brought to the sword. In art, he discovered a space where creativity and clarity blended into a single practice of mindful presence. He found particular resonance in the simplicity of ink painting. With only a brush, paper, and a single motion of the hand, a world could emerge. Musashi understood that the brush revealed the state of the mind just as clearly as the blade did. When his thoughts were still, the lines flowed effortlessly. When clouded, the strokes became uneven. He practiced not to produce masterpieces, but to refine the balance between intention and movement, a balance central to his philosophy of combat. Calligraphy became another way for Musashi to examine the nature of discipline. Writing characters required precision, timing, and awareness of breath, qualities mirrored in the drawing of a sword. He began to appreciate how each character held energy within its form, the same way each stance in combat contained potential. Through repeated practice, he learned to express strength without force and clarity without tension. The ink reflected his inner state, teaching him to cultivate quietness and directness in equal measure. As Musashi explored sculpture, he found a different lesson: patience. Shaping wood or carving stone was slow work, demanding care and attention in every detail. Unlike duels, which lasted only moments, sculpture required days or weeks of steady effort. He realized that mastery in any field depended on the willingness to engage fully with the present moment. The process of carving became a meditation, where the hands followed the mind, and the mind followed the rhythm of creation. Through this, Musashi deepened his understanding of the connection between discipline and art. Nature provided endless inspiration for his artistic pursuits. He studied the curvature of tree branches, the fluttering of bird wings, and the shifting patterns of light across the landscape. These observations shaped the themes of his work, infusing his paintings and teachings with a gentle reverence for the natural world. He believed that nature revealed truths more clearly than human invention. To Musashi, the world itself was a silent teacher, one that spoke through movement, stillness, and the harmony found in all living things. Musashi's artistic growth also influenced his approach to strategy. He began to see combat as a form of creative expression where adaptability and perception mattered more than rigid technique. Just as a painter responded to the flow of ink, a warrior responded to the flow of battle. Both required openness, calmness, and the ability to see beyond the surface. This integration of art and martial skill formed a unique foundation for the philosophy Musashi would later articulate in his writings. The more he immersed himself in the arts, the more he understood that mastery was not limited to a single field. He believed that a true warrior should cultivate many forms of skill, allowing each discipline to illuminate another. His journey through art was not a detour from the path of the sword, it was an essential part of it. Through painting, calligraphy, and sculpture, Musashi refined the clarity and subtlety that would define the later years of his life. This synthesis of art and strategy became a cornerstone of his teachings. By embracing artistic expression, Musashi stepped into a more holistic understanding of himself. His early years had shaped him physically, but these new experiences nurtured the deeper dimensions of his spirit. The lessons he learned through art would guide him through the next stages of his journey, shaping the wisdom that would one day be shared with future generations. His evolution was becoming clearer. Musashi was no longer simply a swordsman. He was becoming a philosopher of life itself. As Musashi continued to explore the intersections between art and martial practice, his understanding of strategy matured into something profound. Strategy, he realized, was not solely about defeating opponents or controlling outcomes. It was a way of seeing the world, an ever-present awareness of timing, intention, and the flow of events. The same principles that guided a painter's brush or a sculptor's chisel guided the movements of a warrior. In this unity, Musashi found the foundations of a broader philosophy. He began to articulate a belief that all disciplines, whether combat, art, or craftsmanship, shared a common source: the alignment of mind, body, and spirit. When these elements were in harmony, action became effortless and clear. When misaligned, even the most skilled technique faltered. Musashi emphasized that mastery was not the repetition of techniques, but the cultivation of presence. This insight echoed through every part of his life, grounding him in a calm and steady awareness. Musashi observed that most people approached challenges with either excessive tension or insufficient focus. In both cases, their minds were clouded, preventing them from seeing the true nature of a situation. He taught that clarity required neither aggression nor passivity, but balance. One must see without distortion, move without hesitation, and adapt without fear. This principle became central to his view of strategy, a principle rooted not in dominance, but in understanding. His experiences with various martial schools reinforced these beliefs. Many warriors were bound by rigid traditions, adhering strictly to forms passed down through generations. While Musashi respected these traditions, he recognized their limitations. He believed that clinging too tightly to predetermined methods created blindness to the realities of conflict. Strategy required openness, flexibility, and the courage to abandon familiar patterns when they no longer served. This insight prepared him for the deeper components of his evolving philosophy. Musashi's reflections also led him to explore the relationship between strategy and emotion. He saw how fear disrupted timing, how anger clouded perception, and how pride weakened awareness. A warrior who was controlled by emotion could not act freely. He taught that one must first calm the heart before calming the hand. Emotional discipline became as important to him as physical skill. By observing his own reactions in training and life, Musashi learned to remain steady even in uncertain or stressful moments. As Musashi walked through villages, forests, and mountain paths, he often contemplated the meaning of intention. He believed that intention guided movement long before muscles responded. Whether drawing a sword or writing a character, the outcome depended on the clarity of the initial thought. Weak intention produced weak action. Clear intention created precise movement. This understanding shaped his approach to both combat and art, forming a bridge between the visible world and the inner realm of thought. Teaching others further refined his understanding. When students struggled with technique, Musashi observed that the issue often lay in their mindset rather than their physical ability. They tried too hard to emulate his movements without grasping the essence behind them. Musashi encouraged them to let go of imitation and instead listen to their own bodies. He believed that every person possessed a natural rhythm, a unique way of moving, aligned with their temperament. His role was to help them discover it, not impose his own form. With each passing year, Musashi grew more certain that strategy extended to all aspects of life. Whether managing conflict, creating art, or navigating personal challenges, the same principles applied. Awareness, adaptability, intention, and calmness formed the foundation of effective action. Musashi lived by these principles, allowing them to guide his decisions both large and small. In this way, he transformed the art of strategy into a philosophy accessible to anyone willing to observe and reflect. By the end of this period in his journey, Musashi's understanding of strategy had grown into something expansive and deeply human. It was no longer limited to the sword. It had become a philosophy of living, a way to approach the world with clarity, calm, and purpose. His insights prepared him for the next stage of his life, where he would continue refining these principles and sharing them with those who sought a deeper understanding of themselves and their place in the world. As Musashi matured in his understanding of strategy and movement, he began refining the martial system that would define his legacy, Niten Ichi Ryu, the school of two heavens as one. The concept was simple, yet revolutionary. Where most swordsmen relied on a single blade, Musashi emphasized the use of both the long sword and the short sword together. This approach represented more than technique. It symbolized the unity of dual forces within oneself. To Musashi, mastery required harmonizing seemingly opposing elements, strength and subtlety, distance and closeness, firmness and flexibility. He developed his method through countless hours of solitary practice. In forests, on riverbanks, and in open fields, Musashi moved with the long sword in one hand and the short sword in the other, adjusting his stances and refining his timing. He observed how each weapon complemented the other, allowing him to maintain control whether near or far. The long sword extended his reach and asserted presence, while the short sword grounded his movements and protected the body. Together they created a balance that reflected the deeper harmony Musashi sought in all aspects of life. As he introduced these ideas to students, many felt challenged by the unfamiliarity of the method. They had been trained in traditions that emphasized the long sword alone. Musashi guided them patiently, encouraging them to release their attachment to familiar forms. He reminded them that adaptability was the essence of strategy. When they struggled, he demonstrated how the two swords worked in unison, flowing with the natural movements of the body rather than resisting them. Over time, students began to appreciate the practicality and elegance of the style. The philosophy behind Niten Ichi Ryu extended beyond physical technique. Musashi taught that the two heavens symbolized dualities within life: thought and action, intuition and reason, stillness and movement. Just as the two swords functioned together without conflict, Musashi believed that harmony within the self created clarity in all endeavors. He encouraged his students to observe their own minds, to recognize when they were divided by fear, pride, or hesitation. The goal was unity within, just as the swords moved as one. Musashi's approach to teaching continued to blend martial training with elements of art and nature. He asked students to watch birds turning in the sky, to feel the weight of stones, and to notice how shadows shifted with the sun. These observations revealed the principles of rhythm, balance, and timing more clearly than any lecture. Musashi believed that a warrior who studied only the sword would never grasp the fullness of strategy. True understanding came from engaging with the world itself, learning from its patterns and subtleties. During this period, Musashi's reputation grew steadily, but he remained humble. He avoided unnecessary conflict and chose teaching, reflection, and creation over dueling. Those who sought to challenge him were often turned away with gentle firmness. Musashi no longer needed to test himself against others. He had entered a stage of life where the greatest challenge was refining his own spirit. His focus shifted toward transmitting his philosophy to future generations, a responsibility he accepted with quiet dedication. The development of Niten Ichi Ryu marked a profound evolution in Musashi's path. It embodied the wisdom he had gained through experience, art, and introspection. As he continued refining the style, he sensed that the teachings were larger than himself, meant to endure long after he left the physical world. This awareness brought him a sense of calm purpose. He was not merely shaping a martial system, he was shaping a philosophy that could guide others toward clarity, balance, and resilience. As Musashi deepened his commitment to teaching and refinement, he began to expand his exploration of what it meant to live beyond the limitations of any single discipline. Though the sword had shaped his life, he sensed that the essence of mastery lay in understanding the world from many perspectives. He continued studying painting, poetry, and sculpture, appreciating how each form revealed something unique about the human spirit. The more he practiced, the more he realized that all arts converged at the same point, the cultivation of awareness. His paintings from this period often depicted natural elements, birds in flight, mountain passes, trees bending in the wind. Each brushstroke reflected the simplicity and depth he valued. He practiced sumiya not to impress others, but to train his mind to observe clearly and express intention without hesitation. For Musashi, painting was another form of strategy. The empty space on the paper held just as much meaning as the ink, teaching him to appreciate absence as much as presence. Calligraphy further strengthened his understanding of rhythm and movement. Writing characters required precision, breath control, and fluidity, qualities essential to effective swordsmanship. Musashi saw each character as a small universe shaped by the mind of the writer. Some strokes revealed confidence, others hesitation. He learned to express strength without force and elegance without ornamentation. Through these practices, his spirit softened, becoming broader and more attuned to the subtleties of life. Musashi also developed a strong interest in architecture and craftsmanship. He examined the structure of temples, bridges, and homes, noticing the balance between function and beauty. He admired how carpenters worked with the grain of the wood rather than against it, shaping material with understanding rather than domination. These observations mirrored his own philosophy. Just as a structure must be built with precision and harmony, a life must be shaped with awareness and intention. In his interactions with others, Musashi grew calmer and more measured. He spoke less, listened more, and chose his words carefully. Students saw him as a mentor, whose quiet presence carried more weight than any dramatic display of technique. Musashi believed that teaching required humility, the ability to understand where a student stood and how best to guide them. He did not impose his philosophy. He offered it gently, allowing each person to absorb it in their own time. Despite his peaceful demeanor, Musashi remained disciplined. He continued to refine his physical skills, understanding that the body must remain strong to support the clarity of the mind. Yet his training sessions were no longer driven by the desire to defeat opponents. Instead, they were moments of meditation, where movement and breath aligned in harmony. Musashi practiced not to conquer others, but to cultivate the deepest parts of himself. As he explored life beyond the blade, Musashi gained a clearer sense of the path ahead. He knew that his journey was shifting from outward action to inward reflection. The world still offered lessons, but they now came through stillness rather than conflict. He sensed that the time would soon come to put his teachings into written form, to distill his philosophy into words that could guide future generations. This realization filled him with a quiet sense of purpose. By the end of this stage in his life, Musashi had grown into a figure of profound balance, a warrior, artist, teacher, and seeker. His path had expanded far beyond the duels that defined his youth. He now understood that the true essence of the sword lay not in violence, but in the clarity it revealed. The next chapters of his journey would bring him closer to this understanding, leading him toward a life of wisdom, creation, and enduring legacy. As Musashi entered the next stage of his life, solitude became one of his greatest teachers. Though he had gathered students and companions along his journey, he often chose to step away from the world to deepen his understanding. Solitude was not loneliness to Musashi, it was clarity. It was a place where distractions fell away, where thoughts could settle like leaves drifting to the forest floor. In these moments of stillness, he refined insights that could not be awakened in the presence of noise. He spent long stretches in remote areas, retreating to mountain paths, riverside clearings, and abandoned shrines. These solitary retreats allowed him to engage in deep reflection on the experiences that had shaped him. The wind through the branches, the slow drift of clouds, and the sound of water against stone became quiet companions. Musashi learned that the world spoke in its own language, offering wisdom through patterns, silence, and the unbroken flow of nature. These teachings guided his philosophy as much as any duel or encounter. During these retreats, Musashi's training took on a more meditative quality. He practiced movements slowly, sometimes repeating the same motion hundreds of times, until his body felt no separation between intention and action. He sought not intensity, but purity, the seamless integration of awareness and movement. The sword became an extension of his breath, rising and falling with the same calm rhythm. Musashi believed that mastery required knowing oneself fully, and solitude provided the space to confront the deeper layers of the mind. Meditation became a significant part of Musashi's daily life. He would sit for long periods, observing his thoughts without attachment, allowing emotions to settle like dust in sunlight. Through this practice, he recognized how easily the mind could become clouded by pride, fear, and desire. These subtle distractions, he believed, were more dangerous than any opponent. A wandering mind led to wandering action. By learning to calm his thoughts, Musashi cultivated the inner stillness that later defined his presence as a teacher and philosopher. While alone, he also spent time recording ideas in rough notes and sketches. These early writings were not yet formal teachings, but quiet reflections that would later inform his most influential works. He wrote about timing, intention, and the importance of perceiving truth without distortion. His notes revealed a mind engaged in constant contemplation, a mind no longer concerned with proving itself through victory, but with understanding the patterns that governed life. This inward shift marked a significant evolution in Musashi's journey. Yet solitude did not harden Musashi. It softened him. It allowed him to see life beyond conflict, beyond ambition, beyond the boundaries of the warrior class. He observed the gentleness in everyday life, the perseverance of plants growing through stone, the compassion of villagers helping one another, the quiet dignity of monks living without attachment. These observations nurtured his understanding of balance. To Musashi, strength without gentleness was incomplete. The sword without wisdom was merely a tool of destruction. As he moved between periods of solitude and teaching, Musashi carried this inner calm with him. Those who met him during this time described a man whose presence alone could settle a room. He spoke sparingly, choosing words with care. Students sensed that his silence held as much meaning as his instruction. Musashi embodied the principle that true mastery emerged not from force, but from clarity. And through solitude, he had found the clarity that would guide the rest of his life. Musashi eventually returned to traveling, not as a young Ronin seeking challenges, but as a seasoned practitioner searching for deeper understanding. Each journey through towns, forests, and mountains became an opportunity to observe the world with renewed perspective. He walked with the ease of someone no longer troubled by uncertainty. The path was simply part of his practice, a place where he could study human nature, refine his awareness, and remain open to unexpected lessons. The road became a classroom without walls. He encountered many different kinds of people along his travels. Farmers bent over their fields, merchants shouting their prices in bustling markets, monks chanting quietly in mountain temples. Musashi observed each person with calm interest, noting how their actions reflected their inner states. He realized that strategy existed everywhere, not only in combat. The way a merchant negotiated, the way a child balanced on a narrow beam, the way a craftsman shaped his work, all expressed principles of timing, intention, and awareness. During these travels, Musashi sought out conversations with thinkers, monks, and artisans. He valued the perspectives of those who had committed themselves to understanding the world through different lenses. These discussions revealed to him the universality of mastery. Whether a person practiced calligraphy, swordsmanship, pottery, or meditation, the path toward excellence followed similar patterns. Musashi believed that wisdom could be found in every discipline as long as one approached it with sincerity and dedication. Occasionally, Musashi would still be challenged by aspiring warriors or proud martial artists hoping to test themselves. He accepted only when necessary, and even then, his movements were measured and restrained. His goal was no longer to defeat opponents, but to teach them. Many walked away realizing that their true battle lay not against Musashi, but against their own assumptions and limitations. These encounters reminded him of his younger years, when he too had sought clarity through confrontation, and they strengthened his resolve to live according to a different purpose. In quieter moments on the road, Musashi reflected on how far he had come. His early years had been driven by ambition and the desire to prove himself, but now, looking back, he saw how each experience, every duel, every retreat, every conversation had shaped him into someone far more grounded. He no longer sought external validation. Instead, he focused on aligning his actions with the deeper truths he had discovered. His path was no longer outward, but inward. Musashi also found that his relationship with nature deepened during these travels. He saw the world through the eyes of someone who understood impermanence. Flowers blooming along the roadside reminded him of the fleeting nature of beauty. Storms passing over mountains illustrated the inevitability of change. Clear rivers demonstrated how the mind could flow freely when unburdened. Musashi believed that the lessons nature offered were essential to understanding strategy, because nature revealed life exactly as it was, without disguise. These insights shaped the way Musashi guided the students who chose to accompany him. He encouraged them to observe their surroundings, remain open to experience, and cultivate awareness in every moment. Many students expected rigid instruction, but Musashi taught through example rather than formal structure. He believed learning occurred naturally when the mind was calm and receptive. His guidance helped students see beyond technique, allowing them to recognize the deeper principles that governed their movements. By the end of this period, Musashi had fully embraced the role of a wandering sage, a teacher whose wisdom emerged from experience rather than doctrine. The road continued forward, offering new landscapes, new encounters, and new lessons. Musashi walked its length with steady steps, knowing that every journey, no matter how familiar, held something worth learning. And as he traveled, the foundations of the teachings he would one day write down grew clearer with each passing day. As Musashi traveled into the later years of his wandering life, his philosophy began to crystallize. What had once been scattered insights gathered over years of duels, solitude, and artistic practice now started forming a coherent understanding of the way. Musashi no longer saw the world through the narrow lens of swordsmanship alone. Instead, he viewed life as a series of interconnected paths, each one offering lessons that shaped the spirit. This larger vision marked an important evolution, the transformation from warrior to philosopher. His reflections during this time became deeper and more structured. He often paused along the road to sit quietly beneath a tree or beside a stream, writing ideas on scraps of paper or etched wood. These notes revealed a mind distilling complex experiences into simple truths. Musashi believed that clarity came from reducing life to its essential principles, removing anything unnecessary. This process of refinement mirrored his approach to combat: eliminate wasted movement, eliminate hesitation, and eliminate distraction. Only then could truth reveal itself. One of Musashi's central realizations was the importance of perceiving reality without illusion. He observed how the mind often distorted circumstances through expectation, emotion, or fear. A warrior who saw only what he wanted to see became vulnerable. A warrior who saw clearly without attachment could respond appropriately to any situation. Musashi emphasized that this clarity was not limited to combat. It applied to daily life, relationships, decisions, and creative acts. Seeing truly required self-awareness, the courage to confront one's own biases and limitations. Musashi also refined his understanding of timing, a concept he believed governed everything. He saw timing not merely as a moment to strike in combat, but as the rhythm of life itself. The right action taken at the wrong time failed. The wrong action at the right time faltered. But when intention aligned with timing, even a simple gesture held immense power. Musashi encouraged students to observe timing in nature, the opening of flowers, the strain of wind, the turning of seasons. Through these rhythms, they could learn the subtle patterns that guided all strategy. Another central idea in Musashi's evolving philosophy was adaptability. He recognized that rigid systems, though comforting, often collapsed under unexpected pressure. A warrior who clung to fixed methods became predictable. Musashi believed that one must remain open, fluid, and ready to shift direction without hesitation. Adaptability came not from abandoning discipline, but from deepening it, cultivating an inner steadiness that allowed one to move freely. This insight became one of the pillars of his teachings, shaping the legacy he would eventually record in writing. As his thoughts matured, Musashi realized that strategy was not limited to moments of conflict. It was a continuous practice, woven through every aspect of life. How one approached work, relationships, or challenges reflected the same principles found in combat: awareness, timing, intention, and clarity. By applying strategy to daily life, one could live with purpose and balance. Musashi began teaching his students that the sword was merely a tool. The true path lay in mastering the mind that guided it. Throughout this time of reflection, Musashi maintained his dedication to the arts. Painting and calligraphy became ways to express ideas that words could not capture. A single brushstroke revealed the state of one's spirit more honestly than a lecture. Through art, Musashi refined the patience, precision, and presence that formed the foundation of his philosophy. His creative practices and martial practices blended seamlessly, shaping a unified approach to understanding. By the end of this stage, Musashi sensed that he was preparing for something important, a moment when he would gather his life's insights into a single teaching. His philosophy had matured through experience, reflection, and solitude. Now it waited patiently to be expressed fully. Musashi felt the path ahead shifting once more, guiding him toward a deeper purpose that would define the final chapters of his life. As Musashi's reflections intensified, he began outlining the foundations of what he called the Way, a philosophy that united martial skill, artistic practice, and inner understanding. He believed that every path, whether swordsmanship or calligraphy, required the same fundamentals: discipline, awareness, intention, and adaptability. These principles formed a common thread that ran through all craftsmanship and all human endeavor. Musashi saw that mastery in any field followed predictable patterns, no matter the tools used. One of the first principles Musashi defined was the perception of truth. This meant seeing situations as they were, not as one wished them to be. He explained to students that delusion clouded judgment, creating openings for failure. Truth required bravery, the bravery to observe oneself honestly, without excuses or self-deception. Musashi taught that a person who cultivated clear perception could navigate life with steady confidence, unaffected by the turbulence of external events. Another principle Musashi emphasized was balance. He spoke of balance not as a static state, but as a dynamic harmony between opposing forces. Just as his style of two swords represented dual aspects moving as one, life required a similar integration. Strength needed gentleness, action needed stillness, determination needed humility. Musashi believed that imbalance, whether in combat or in daily life, led to unnecessary struggle. Harmony with oneself created harmony with the world. Timing became another essential element of the Way. Musashi believed that understanding timing meant understanding the nature of opportunity. There were moments to act, moments to wait, and moments to withdraw. Recognizing these moments required attentiveness and emotional calm. Musashi explained that the mind must be steady to perceive subtle shifts in circumstances. Timing was not luck, it was awareness, refined through discipline. When mastered, timing could change the course of battle and the direction of life. Musashi also taught the importance of the empty mind, a concept found in Zen practice. This did not mean emptiness in the sense of hollowness, but a mind free from distraction. When one held no attachment to preconceived ideas, action flowed naturally. The empty mind responded to reality instead of reacting to fear or desire. Musashi believed that this state of clarity allowed a person to meet each moment fully, without hesitation. It was a difficult practice, but essential for understanding the way. Throughout this period, Musashi refined his insights through conversation with students and through personal reflection. He noticed that people often sought complicated explanations for their struggles when the answers were usually simple. Focus the mind. Align intention with action. Observe without distortion. Respond without fear. These principles form the heart of the way. Musashi believed that the simplest truths were often the most profound. As he clarified these teachings, Musashi grew increasingly aware that his life's wisdom must eventually be preserved. He carried within him lessons that had been shaped by countless encounters, challenges, and reflections. The world was changing, and he sensed that future generations would need guidance. He did not think of himself as a sage or philosopher. He simply understood that experience must be shared if it was to endure. This realization paved the way for one of his greatest contributions. By the time Musashi reached the end of this phase of his journey, he stood at the threshold of transformation. His philosophy had taken form, shaped by a lifetime of wandering, observing, and refining. What remained was to express it, fully, clearly, and with the simplicity he valued. The foundations of the way were ready, and Musashi himself had become the vessel through which they would be passed to the world. As Musashi progressed further along his journey, he began to sense a shift, not only in his understanding but within his very spirit. The restless energy that had driven his youth, the urge to seek out challenges, to test himself, to confront the chaos of the world, had softened. In its place grew a gentle stillness, a quiet strength born from decades of introspection and experience. This stillness was not passive. It was steady, attentive, and deeply aware. Musashi now carried within him a calm that allowed him to perceive life with increasing clarity. He found himself drawn to places where the world felt open and undisturbed. Rivers flowing between moss-covered stones, mountain paths lined with cedar trees, and quiet shrines tucked into forest clearings became his companions. In such settings, Musashi meditated on the patterns of nature, observing how movement arose from stillness and how stillness supported movement. The deeper he looked, the more he understood that all things, whether swords, brushstrokes, or thoughts, followed rhythms larger than human intention. These insights nurtured the growing philosophy that guided him. Musashi's training during this time grew quieter, more inward-focused. He continued to practice his sword forms, but the urgency once present in his movements had faded. Instead of seeking perfection through repetition, he sought harmony between intention and breath. His steps became softer, his motions more fluid, and his awareness more refined. Students who observed him noted that his presence alone seemed to slow the air around him, as though his calm radiated outward like ripples across a still pond. He had moved beyond technique into something far deeper. His teaching also shifted in tone. Where once he emphasized adaptability and vigilance, he now spoke more about perspective, awareness, and the cultivation of presence. Musashi encouraged students to train not just their bodies, but their hearts and minds. He urged them to sit in silence, to breathe with attention, and to examine their own reactions to difficulty. He explained that the sword was ultimately a tool for perceiving oneself. Once the inner world became balanced, the outer world followed naturally. His lessons took on a philosophical depth that resonated with students long after their training ended. During this phase, Musashi became increasingly aware of how fleeting life was. The seasons changed with a subtle rhythm, and he felt each transition more acutely than before. The flowers blooming and withering, the snow melting from mountaintops, and the autumn leaves drifting to the ground reminded him that all things, even the strongest, were subject to time. Far from discouraging him, this realization deepened his appreciation for the present moment. Musashi believed that understanding impermanence brought clarity because it showed the value of living with intention. He occasionally accepted invitations from lords or wealthy patrons who sought his presence, but he never stayed long. Wealth and status held little meaning for him. Musashi was no longer driven by the desire to impress or influence powerful individuals. Instead, he sought authenticity and simplicity wherever he went. He preferred the company of monks, craftsmen, and villagers, people who lived close to the rhythms of the earth. Their humility reminded him of the essential principles that guided his path. As his stillness deepened, Musashi began sensing that the time for active wandering was nearing its end. He felt no sorrow in this realization. Instead, he recognized it as part of the natural cycle of life. The road had given him countless lessons, but now it gently encouraged him toward a quieter chapter. His spirit longed for a place where he could consolidate his insights, share them more clearly, and settle into the life of a teacher without the demands of travel. The seed of this idea took root in his mind and slowly began to grow. By the end of this period, Musashi stood at a quiet threshold. He had walked the path of the warrior, the artist, the wanderer, and the seeker. Now the path ahead pointed toward a new purpose, one of preservation, reflection, and teaching. Stillness had become not merely a practice, but a way of life. And through that stillness, Musashi would soon create the work that would define his legacy for centuries to come. Eventually, Musashi's journey led him to the domain of Higo in modern-day Kumamoto. The region was known for its natural beauty, rolling hills, dense forests, and quiet villages nestled beneath volcanic mountains. There, the Hosokawa clan invited Musashi to stay as a guest and advisor. They valued his wisdom not only as a warrior, but as a philosopher and artist. For the first time in many years, Musashi felt a sense of belonging, a gentle settling of the spirit as though the land itself welcomed him. This place offered both serenity and stability, two qualities he had long sought without realizing it. The Hosokawa clan treated Musashi with respect and offered him the freedom to pursue his teachings however he chose. He no longer needed to wander in search of understanding. The calmness of Higo provided all the space he required. He trained students under the shade of trees, using open courtyards as dojos. His lessons were unhurried, filled with pauses, reflection, and quiet demonstrations. Students felt that Musashi's teachings had softened, becoming not weaker but deeper, shaped by decades of contemplation and refinement. During his time in Higo, Musashi developed a close relationship with the clan's retainers and young warriors. They admired not only his skill, but his humility and gentleness. Musashi taught them that the purpose of the sword was not violence, but clarity. He emphasized that strength without compassion was incomplete, and that a warrior must cultivate wisdom as diligently as skill. His guidance extended beyond combat. He advised them on matters of character, strategy, and personal growth. Through this mentorship, Musashi transformed the castle into a place of learning. He also continued his practice of the arts, finding inspiration in the landscapes of Higo. The mountains, rivers, and changing seasons informed his paintings and poems. Musashi completed some of his most well-known artwork during this period, including ink paintings of birds and nature scenes that conveyed both simplicity and depth. These works revealed the tranquility he carried within him, a tranquility shaped by years of wandering, struggle, and reflection. His art became an expression of the stillness he had cultivated in his heart. As time passed, Musashi grew increasingly aware of the legacy he hoped to leave behind. Students and retainers encouraged him to compile his teachings into a written work, knowing that his wisdom should endure beyond spoken instruction. Musashi considered this idea carefully. Writing required clarity, precision, and responsibility. He wanted to ensure that every word carried the essence of his philosophy without distortion. The desire to record his understanding settled gently upon him like falling leaves, inevitable, natural, and timely. With this intention forming, Musashi began preparing mentally for the work ahead. He reviewed the lessons he had learned throughout his life, the duels of his youth, the years of wandering, his encounters with nature, and the countless insights that had shaped his understanding of the way. Each memory became a thread in a larger tapestry. He sensed that the time was approaching when he would step away from public life and devote himself entirely to distilling these lessons into written form. By the end of his stay in Higo, Musashi had reached a calm turning point. He had found a place of stability, taught students who would carry forward his legacy, and deepened his understanding of the principles that defined his life. The next chapter of his journey would lead him to a place of seclusion, where he would write the masterpiece that would shape generations of warriors, artists, and thinkers. The quiet halls of Higo had prepared him well for what was to come. As Musashi reached the later years of his life, he felt a quiet but insistent pull toward solitude once again. The teachings he had shared in Higo were meaningful, yet he sensed that the deepest expression of his understanding still remained unwritten. To articulate the essence of his philosophy, he needed silence, a place free from distraction, responsibility, and worldly noise. This desire led him to Reigando, a secluded cave nestled among rocky hills overlooking the plains of Kumamoto. It was a place where monks had once meditated, and where nature whispered in steady, unbroken rhythm. The cave was simple, illuminated only by the soft light filtering in from its entrance. Musashi carried little with him, writing materials, a few personal belongings, and the quiet resolve to complete the work that had been forming within him for decades. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, creating a sound like distant waves. Inside, the stone walls held the cool stillness of centuries. Musashi settled into this environment with ease, feeling as though he had finally arrived at the place where his inner journey could fully unfold. Each day in the cave followed a gentle, disciplined rhythm. Musashi rose early, meditated in silence, and walked the surrounding hills to clear his mind. The mountains, the shifting clouds, and the play of light across the landscape all served as sources of reflection. When he returned to the cave, he began writing. Slowly at first, carefully shaping each thought. His words flowed not from urgency, but from clarity. It was as though the insights that had been scattered across his lifetime were now aligning, ready to be expressed in their simplest and truest form. Musashi approached his writing with the same precision he applied to drawing a sword or holding a brush. He refined each sentence to its essence, removing anything unnecessary or unclear. He believed that true guidance must be simple, direct, and practical. The cave's silence allowed him to hear his own thoughts without distortion. Through this stillness, he discovered the most distilled version of his philosophy, a way grounded in awareness, timing, intention, and adaptability. The teachings he wrote were not abstract theories, but reflections born from lived experience. When Musashi paused from writing, he often sat at the mouth of the cave, watching the landscape stretch toward the horizon. The view reminded him of the roads he once traveled as a young Ronin, seeking duels and encounters. Now those memories felt distant, like shadows cast by a setting sun. Musashi understood that the impetuous warrior he once was had transformed slowly, year by year, into someone guided by reflection rather than force. His time in the cave allowed him to see the arc of his life with profound clarity, a journey shaped not only by victory, but by humility and growth. As the days passed, Musashi felt a deep sense of purpose guiding his hand. He was no longer writing for himself, but for those who would walk the path of mastery long after he was gone. His insights belonged not to the world he had lived in, but to the timeless principles that guided all human endeavor. Each page he completed brought him a quiet sense of fulfillment, as though he were placing stones along a path that others might follow. The cave, silent and ancient, became a sanctuary where his life's wisdom took its final form. During his time in Reigando, Musashi began composing the work that would become his greatest legacy, Go Rin no Sho, known in the West as the Book of Five Rings. The text was divided into 5 sections: earth, water, fire, wind, and void, each representing a different dimension of strategy. Musashi chose these elements not only for their symbolic meaning, but for the clarity they offered in organizing the teachings he had gathered throughout his life. The structure reflected the natural world, grounding his philosophy in universal principles. The Earth Scroll laid the foundation of his strategy. Here, Musashi explained fundamental concepts, the importance of grounding oneself, understanding purpose, and maintaining stability. Earth represented the beginning of all practice, the root from which mastery grew. Musashi emphasized the importance of observation and balance, teaching that one must know the lay of the land, both literally and metaphorically, before stepping into action. These principles guided students toward a strong, centered presence. The Water Scroll explored adaptability. Musashi wrote that water takes the shape of its container and flows around obstacles with ease. This element captured the heart of his philosophy, the ability to adjust without hesitation, to see clearly without rigid attachment to form. Musashi described how a warrior must shape their movements to reflect their surroundings, responding fluidly to each moment. Water revealed the value of openness, receptivity, and the natural flow of intention. The Fire Scroll focused on direct engagement, the heat and intensity of conflict. Here, Musashi described tactics for reading opponents, seizing initiative, and maintaining rhythm during confrontation. Fire embodied action, decisiveness, and the ability to strike with clarity when the moment demanded. Musashi did not glorify combat. Instead, he explained it as a disciplined application of awareness. Through fire, he taught that effective action arose not from anger, but from precision. The Wind Scroll examined other schools of swordsmanship. Musashi studied their methods, noting both their strengths and limitations. By understanding the winds of other traditions, one learned how to adapt to different styles and avoid becoming trapped within a single perspective. Musashi encouraged students to remain open-minded, reminding them that no school held all truth. Wind represented perspective, the ability to see beyond one's own assumptions and recognize the value in many approaches. Finally, the Void Scroll expressed the deepest part of Musashi's philosophy. Void represented the space beyond thought, beyond technique, beyond form, the emptiness that held all possibility. Musashi described the void not as a blankness, but as a state of pure clarity where action flowed naturally, free from hesitation or fear. It was the culmination of his life's pursuit, the understanding that true mastery required stepping beyond ego and fully entering the present moment. The void was not easily explained, yet it remained the heart of his teachings. As Musashi completed each section, he felt a growing sense of peace. The work reflected not only his experiences, but the essence of his life's journey. It captured the lessons he had learned through hardship, solitude, art, and combat. Writing. The Book of Five Rings was a final act of service, a way to share his wisdom with future generations who might never know the world he had lived in. Musashi hoped the text would guide them toward clarity, strength, and understanding. By the time he finished the manuscript, Musashi felt a gentle closure settling over him. His purpose was now fulfilled. The knowledge he carried no longer rested solely within his mind. It had been placed into words that would endure long after he left the world. The cave, once a place of introspection, had become a birthplace of legacy. With calm gratitude, Musashi prepared to leave Reigando and return to the quiet life that awaited him. After completing the Book of Five Rings, Musashi emerged from Reigando with a renewed sense of calm. The work he had carried within him for so long had finally taken form, leaving his spirit unburdened. His steps were slower now, though not from weakness, but from a deeper sense of peace. He returned to the Hosokawa domain with the quiet presence of one who had fulfilled a great responsibility. Those who saw him noticed a shift in his demeanor, an even greater stillness, an ease of movement that seemed to flow like water. Musashi resumed spending time among his students, offering guidance not through strict instruction, but through gentle presence. He did not speak often of the book he had written, nor did he boast of the wisdom it contained. Instead, he continued teaching through example. His lessons grew simpler, emphasizing awareness, balance, and sincerity. He believed that the essence of the way could not be conveyed through words alone. It had to be lived, observed, and absorbed naturally through experience. He encouraged his students to cultivate their own paths rather than rely solely on his teachings. Musashi knew that true mastery could not be achieved by imitation. Each individual had a unique nature shaped by temperament, background, and purpose. He urged them to observe themselves carefully, to recognize where their strengths and weaknesses lay. Through this introspection, they would discover their own rhythm, a pattern of movement and thought that aligned with their essence. Musashi's guidance became less about technique and more about understanding oneself. During this time, Musashi also began writing shorter works that complemented the ideas in the Book of Five Rings. Among these was the Dokodo, or the Path of Aloneness, a collection of 21 precepts reflecting the simplicity and discipline of his later years. These teachings emphasized detachment, humility, and clarity of intention. They captured the spiritual heart of Musashi's philosophy, a message shaped by a lifetime of wandering, reflection, and self-discovery. The precepts were not strict rules, but quiet invitations to live with awareness and integrity. Despite his age, Musashi remained active in the arts. He painted, carved, and practiced calligraphy with the same dedication he brought to swordsmanship. His brushstrokes grew even more fluid, reflecting a mind free from burden. Visitors to the Hosokawa domain often admired his work, noting how each piece carried a sense of effortless grace. Through art, Musashi expressed the stillness he had cultivated within himself, a stillness that words could not fully capture. As Musashi spent more time in contemplation, he also took comfort in the relationships he had formed with his students. They had grown not only as warriors, but as individuals. Their presence reminded him that his teachings would live on through their actions and interpretations. Musashi understood that knowledge was not meant to be preserved unchanged, but to evolve as each generation encountered new challenges. He trusted his students to carry his philosophy forward in their own way. In the quiet moments of these later years, Musashi often walked through the gardens of the Hosokawa estate. The sound of leaves in the wind, the sight of ponds reflecting the sky, and the rhythm of nature brought him peace. He recognized that his journey had come full circle. The boy who once wandered forests seeking escape had become a teacher who found wisdom in the same silence. Musashi felt gratitude for every path he had walked, the difficult, the uncertain, and the serene. As time continued its gentle passage, Musashi's health began to decline. Age settled into his body, yet his mind remained clear, sharp, and deeply aware. He accepted these changes with calm dignity, understanding that all things moved according to natural cycles. The strength that once carried him across battlefields had transformed into a quieter form of resilience. Musashi did not resist aging. Instead, he embraced it as another phase of the way, an experience offering insights that youth could not provide. He withdrew more frequently into personal reflection, spending long hours meditating or observing the world around him. The simplicity of life brought him comfort. Meals became smaller, movements slower, and conversations fewer, but each moment was lived with intention. Friends and students visited him regularly, sitting quietly by his side or engaging in gentle discussions. Musashi no longer needed to teach actively. His presence alone conveyed the depth of his understanding. Those who met him during this time described him as serene, composed, and entirely at peace. During one of his final seasons in the Hosokawa domain, Musashi realized that his journey was nearing its end. He felt no fear in this recognition, only gratitude. He had lived fully, explored widely, and understood deeply. His accomplishments were not confined to duels or written works. They were woven into the countless lives he had touched. Musashi had become more than a warrior. He had become a guide for anyone seeking clarity, balance, and purpose. His legacy extended far beyond the sword he once carried. As his strength waned, Musashi chose to spend his remaining days in quiet seclusion. He returned to meditation, reflecting on the lessons of his life and the truths that had guided him. The world grew softer, quieter, and more luminous in these moments. He understood that the distinctions between action and stillness, life and death, self and world, were all threads in a single tapestry. Musashi accepted the impermanence of existence with profound calmness, seeing it as a continuation of the way rather than an ending. Those who visited him during these final days sensed the depth of his peace. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his words were gentle and concise, distilled to their purest form. Students gathered outside his dwelling, practicing their forms with the quiet devotion he had taught them. They felt his presence even when he slept, a presence that reminded them to remain steady, sincere, and aware. Musashi's final teachings were not written, but lived, embodied in the serenity he carried until his last breath. When Musashi finally passed, he did so with the same calmness that had guided his life. There was no fear, no resistance, only acceptance. His body rested, but his teachings continued to move like a quiet current through the hearts of his students and through the generations that followed. In his absence, the world felt a subtle shift, the passing of a great but humble spirit. Yet the stillness he left behind remained, echoing softly through time. Musashi's journey had come to an end, but the way he defined lived on. It existed in the balance of nature, in the movement of the sword, in the flow of ink on paper, and in the hearts of those who sought to understand themselves. His life became a testament to the quiet power of clarity, awareness, and presence. Even in death, Musashi continued to guide, teach, and inspire, a silent lantern illuminating the path of those who walked after him. After Musashi's passing, the world around him felt subtly changed, as though a quiet wind had shifted direction. Those who had learned from him carried memories of his calm presence, his steady gaze, and the simplicity with which he taught even the most profound lessons. The Hosokawa domain, once filled with the echoes of training and conversation, now held a softer stillness. Students practiced their forms with quiet devotion, honoring the man who had guided them, not through force, but through clarity and example. In their movements, Musashi's spirit continued to live. The teachings he left behind began to spread beyond the castle walls. Warriors shared stories of his wisdom, scholars studied his writings, and artists admired the depth revealed in his paintings and calligraphy. Musashi's influence traveled through generations, not as a tale of conquest, but as a message of discipline, awareness, and balance. People from all walks of life found meaning in his words, recognizing that the way he described applied not only to combat, but to the deeper struggles of the heart. His legacy slowly grew, not through fame, but through quiet resonance. As the Book of Five Rings reached new readers, it revealed fresh insights with each generation. Warriors studied its strategies, leaders explored its principles of decision-making, and creators found inspiration in its reflections on clarity and intention. Musashi's teachings responded to the needs of each era because they were built on universal truths. Whether used for martial arts, business, philosophy, or personal growth, the principles remained steady and adaptable. His words were not instructions, but invitations, urging readers to discover wisdom through their own experience. Even those who never trained in swordsmanship sensed something timeless in Musashi's approach to life. He had shown that mastery arose not from victory alone, but from resilience, curiosity, and the willingness to face oneself honestly. His journey illustrated that strength could coexist with gentleness, and discipline could lead to compassion. Musashi's life reminded people that true greatness came from the inside, shaped quietly by daily effort and thoughtful intention. His philosophy became a lantern for anyone seeking clarity in the midst of hardship. Meanwhile, his artistic works continued to inspire those who encountered them. The simplicity of his brushstrokes revealed a depth of understanding that could not be expressed through words alone. His paintings of birds, landscapes, and natural forms captured the same spirit of clarity he sought through combat and meditation. These works offered viewers a glimpse into his heart, a heart shaped by nature, solitude, and an unwavering devotion to understanding. Through art, Musashi's presence remained gentle, steady, and enduring. In time, Musashi's name became woven into the culture and history of Japan. His duels, journeys, and writings formed the foundation of countless stories, plays, and poems. Yet beneath the legend, people continued to feel the humanity of the man he had been. His life was not defined by perfection or dominance, but by sincere effort and continuous growth. His journey encouraged others to walk their own paths without fear, trusting that clarity would emerge through persistence and reflection. This sense of connection kept Musashi's legacy alive in the hearts of many. By the time centuries had passed, Musashi's influence had traveled far beyond his homeland. His teachings reached audiences across continents, resonating with warriors, thinkers, and creators around the world. Despite cultural differences, people recognized the universality of his message. They saw in Musashi not only a master swordsman, but a philosopher who understood the quiet struggles shared by all humanity. Through this recognition, his legacy expanded not by force, but by understanding, carried gently, hand to hand, through time. As generations continued to build upon Musashi's teachings, his philosophy evolved into a living tradition. Each reader, each practitioner, and each artist found their own meaning in his work. Some focused on strategy, others on mindfulness, others on the harmony between body and spirit. The versatility of his insights allowed the way to adapt to changing eras, just as Musashi had adapted to the changing landscapes of his life. His wisdom became a quiet current, moving through history, shaping the hearts and minds of countless individuals. Martial artists studied his techniques not only to improve their skill, but to understand the deeper principles that guided their movements. They recognized that Musashi's emphasis on awareness, timing, and adaptability applied to all forms of discipline. Whether practicing kendo, aikido, archery, or even modern martial arts, they found echoes of Musashi's teachings in every strike and every breath. His influence became a thread connecting past and present, reminding practitioners that mastery was a lifelong journey. Philosophers and leaders found equal value in his writings. They drew inspiration from his insights about perception, intention, and decisiveness. In boardrooms, classrooms, and creative spaces, people applied his teachings to challenges far removed from physical combat. Musashi's words offered clarity when decisions felt overwhelming and calm when emotions clouded judgment. His voice, though centuries old, felt remarkably present, a reminder that truth, when spoken simply, endures across time. Even individuals with no formal study of martial arts discovered comfort in his reflections. They saw in Musashi's life a story of perseverance, a reminder that growth often arises through hardship, solitude, and honest self-examination. His teachings encouraged people to face fear, let go of unnecessary attachments, and move with purpose. The way became not a path limited to warriors, but a guide for anyone seeking a steady heart in an unpredictable world. Through this universal appeal, Musashi's legacy reached the quiet corners of daily life. The natural world continued to hold the same lessons Musashi once observed. People walking through forests, practicing meditation by rivers, or sketching landscapes often felt connected to the simplicity he cherished. They understood, just as he had, that nature revealed truths untouched by time, the impermanence of life, the strength in flexibility, and the beauty in stillness. These lessons resonated deeply with those who sought grounding in a fast-moving world. Musashi's spirit seemed to linger in the gentle rhythms of nature, speaking softly to those who listened. As centuries passed, Musashi's presence became both historical and timeless. His life story inspired novels, films, and artwork, each interpretation offering new perspectives on his journey. Yet, regardless of the embellishments or retellings, the essence remained the same. Musashi was a man who dedicated himself to understanding the sword, the world, and ultimately himself. That pursuit of clarity became the heart of his legacy, a reminder that wisdom grows quietly through patience and sincere effort. To this day, readers continue to open the Book of Five Rings, finding in its pages insights that feel as relevant as ever. They sense Musashi's voice guiding them toward deeper awareness, urging them to see clearly, act decisively, and live with intention. The way he described has no ending. It expands with each person who embraces it. Musashi's journey concluded long ago, but the way continues forward, carried by every individual who seeks truth through discipline, presence, and reflection. And so, the story of Miyamoto Musashi draws to a gentle close, not with the clash of swords, but with the softness of understanding. His life, shaped by hardship, wandering, reflection, and art, became a testament to the quiet strength found within the human spirit. Musashi showed that mastery is not measured by victory but by clarity, not by dominance but by awareness, and not by noise but by the stillness that allows truth to emerge. As you reflect on his journey, you may sense a calm settling over you, the same calm Musashi found in forests, rivers, and mountain caves. His teachings invite you to breathe, to observe, and to trust the slow unfolding of your own path. Wherever you walk, his reminders follow gently. See clearly, act with purpose. Let go of what clouds the mind. The lantern Musashi carried now glows quietly in the hands of anyone who seeks balance and understanding. Though centuries have passed since he walked the roads of Japan, Musashi's voice remains steady and present. Through his writings, his art, and the legacy of his students, his wisdom continues to guide those who search for a deeper way of living. His life whispers a simple truth. The way is not distant or obscure. It is here, in each breath, each step, and each moment lived with awareness. May Musashi's quiet lantern illuminate your path wherever it leads.